Hi there, and welcome to this short overview video for SoundSpot's Oracle plugin, available via Pluginboutique and direct from SoundSpot. Oracle is a next generation algorithmic reverb plugin for Mac and PC, but it's so much more than that. With onboard reverb, stereo imaging, filtering, saturation, flanger, LFO shaping and compressor, the Oracle is a one-stop shop for all of your creative reverb needs. Oracle brings static parts to life and can push a simple sound into the realms of sound design quickly and easily. After using the Oracle for a few minutes, you'll begin to see the huge range of creative possibilities available. So let's take a look. Oracle's interface is big, bold and simple to use. It works especially well with touch controllers such as the Raven series by Slate Media, but it will also function flawlessly with traditional controllers or simply via mouse clicks too. The signal chain flows down the modules on the left-hand side, so let's look at each of those in turn. Firstly, the reverb module. This is where you can set the pre-delay, reverb length, dampening of the reverb signal, and control the wet-dry mix. The visual display allows you to quickly see the reverb reacting in real time. The meters on the right hand side will show you if your signal is peaking or not, and you can drag the arrow sliders down to reduce output signal. You can also move them independently to pan the entire output signal to balance the effect. The imaging module allows you to adjust the stereo width of the reverb signal, or conversely collapse it to mono. You can also pan the mid signal and the stereo signal independently for accurate placement in the stereo field. Next up, a bandpass filter can be applied with adjustable high and low frequency points and different roll-off curves from 12 dB to 48 dB per octave. Don't forget that you can disable any module just by clicking its graphic here. Three effects are contained within this next module. The saturation control has drive and makeup gain controls, but also attack and release functions for powerful sound shaping. The LFO control can be used to add movement to your reverb. It controls the overall gain of the reverb signal with 4 different LFO shapes, which can also be inverted. The strength can be controlled with this range parameter. The LFO will tempo sync to your DAW in divisions of a 30-second bar, all the way up to 32 bars for really slow transitions. The flanger effect here contains adjustable rate, depth, feedback, and wet-dry mix controls, and also has a mid-side switch which can provide extreme or subtle stereo movement. Lastly, this dynamics module acts as a final compressor on the processed signal, with familiar compression options for controlling the dynamics of the reverberated portion of the signal. As you pull down the threshold, you can see the areas of compression grayed out on the signal display, allowing you to very accurately apply makeup gain. Oracle is a really versatile algorithmic reverb powerhouse with a host of sound design functions on board. For more information, visit www.soundspot.audio or visit
In this movie, I'm going to run through a few of the cool features on Pluginboutique's new soft synth, Carbon Electra, showing you the synthesis behind this fat bass line I've just put together. Instead of giving an overview of everything on the synth, which you can see from the promo movies, I'll just highlight a few of my favourite things about it. First up, you've got oscillator sync available in the oscillator sections, which means you can use oscillators 2 and 4 to add some interesting character and harmonic texture to your sounds. For instance, starting off with the initialized patch here, which is just a square wave from oscillator 1. I'll now turn up oscillator 2 in the mixer section, so we have 2 identical square waves coming from each oscillator. And one thing that's great about this synth is that it shows you the waveform of your patch the whole time, so we can immediately see why we're getting the phase cancellation effects that these combined oscillators are creating, due to slight differences in the phase of each waveform. So if I want to get rid of these effects, I can turn on the trigger switch in each section, which then means the phases are locked so the sound will be more consistent. And you can see then how bringing oscillator 2 in and out simply brings up the level of our square wave, as both oscillators constructively interfere. So if we now change the pitch of oscillator 2, then we can create different intervals, with some being more tuneful than others. But in this default mode, all we're doing is layering another higher pitched square wave, or whatever waveform you select, on top. So we could maybe try a sawtooth instead, to make the sound a bit richer. But what we'll do now is turn on sync, which then means that oscillator 2's waveform now re-triggers every time oscillator 1's does. So the result is that the two stay locked together, and the overriding frequency is that of oscillator 1, with oscillator 2 just adding some additional harmonic content now. So oscillator 2 can be used to shape the higher frequency content in the sound without dominating the pitch like it does with sync turned off. So now what we can do is use one of the LFOs to bring the pitch of oscillator 2 up and down to create some movement in that harmonic content. I normally like it when the rate is quite slow, so the effect is subtle. But you can play with the rate and amount of pitch modulation to create all sorts of different effects. A few more of my favourite things on the synth are the various additional level controls in each of the sections, which mean you've got some nice options for creating warm, analog type sounds. For instance, in the oscillator mix section, there's a plus 12 dB switch, which increases the gain of the oscillators, meaning that when they're set to max, they can be used to overdrive the filter section. So you can hear how much fuller the sound gets when the switch is turned on and off. This works particularly well when combined with the saturation switch in the filter section, which saturates the whole filtered signal rather than just the feedback circuit or resonance. So you can create some really fat sounds using these switches. And you can see that the level is maxed out on the meters there, and that's because there's a limiter on the output, which allows you to add lots of distortion and extra gain without the output clipping. And another useful control in the master section, along with many of the effects sections, is a stereo dial. This is handy for when you have a sound that you don't want to be spread so wide, like a bass preset. So if I increase the number of voices now, detune them a bit too, which makes them sound really wide. Then I can use the stereo dial to bring the sound into the center, making it completely mono if I want. And I couldn't really not mention the sequencer section at the bottom here, which is one of the 6 main modulators on the synth, with the 2 envelopes and 3 LFOs above. Here you can draw in a curve of up to 16 steps, which can then be used to modulate things like the level, filter cutoff, and oscillator 2 and 4's pitch. So if I make it an 8-step curve with a rate of a quarter note, then we get a 2-bar loop to draw in. And I'll make it modulate the filter cutoff up and down. Then I just choose a curve shape by clicking and dragging up and down on the wave select, then click on a step to draw something in, which I can set to whatever level I like. And there are loads of different shapes to select. But there's also a useful edit option for then freely editing the presets to make slight adjustments or shape them into something completely different. And you can see the cutoff jumping up and down on the filter display too, which is a handy reference. Going back to the bass sound from before though now, I'll show you how you can turn this into a nice sequenced bass line, and that's by using the step envelope section as an arpeggiator, which you do by activating the note switch, after which each step sets the note the synth plays. So when I hold down a key, you get a bass line playing. And you can see what the values of the notes are on the display at the top, where it shows you the exact value within the 15 semitone range. And there's also some slow LFO modulation of the cutoff going on with LFO 3 here, to create some extra movement. And what I could do is make the step envelope modulate the cutoff as well, to make it even more interesting. And maybe have the pitch of oscillator 2, which is our synced oscillator, go up and down as well. And lastly, if I turn up the amp dial on LFO 1 now, then I can use it to add a tremolo style effect, so the bass has some more interesting dynamics going on. And it's sounding pretty fat now without any effects being used. But I can of course add any of the 5 really chunky effects to make the preset even more full on. I hope you've enjoyed this movie. For more info and to get hold of the synth for yourself, check the product page at pluginboutique.com.
Hi, I'm David. I'm one of the developers of Scaler, and we're here to introduce some new features in 1.7. In Scaler 1.7, we've introduced quite a few new features, and the first being 30 brand new chord sets. Let's have a listen to a few of them. Firstly, there's 10 bossa nova chord sets. Bossa nova 2. We've also got 10 new Latin chord sets. Let's have a listen to Latin 4. And another Latin chord set. And we've also got 10 brand new blues sets as well. Let's have a listen to a couple of them. Here's Blues 1. And Blues 5. We've also introduced hundreds of new scales. Now the cool thing about that is obviously that there's lots more exploration to do. So let's say, for example, that I'm going to use an unconventional scale for something I'm composing for, or a track that I'm producing. Scaler is now going to be able to detect and offer me a lot more potential scales of where I may be in. So let's say I'm playing this combination of notes. Yeah, so now Scaler's told me that I could be in an altered scale, a super Lockerian with a double flattened third, or a Lockerian with a natural third, and telling me that, for example, the Lockerian with the natural third scale is the 5th mode of Neapolitan minor. If I select that, it's telling me it's complex and jazzy, and sure enough, I've discovered a new scale that I wouldn't normally be in. Complex and jazzy. There's also 3 really new cool features which many of our users have been requesting. I'm very excited to introduce. Let's say I go into, say, Blues 1. So the first feature is that we've introduced a preview button right in the browser, so you can preview through any chord progression right in the browser. I can also now copy the entire chord progression straight to the builder. So there's a copy to builder button. If I select it, it'll move the entire progression down to the builder, which is a really great time-saving feature. Let's say, for example, Scaler is now telling me I'm in the C acoustic scale, most likely. Let's say I want to play around and do some exploring, I come down to, say, F major, and I replace all the Fs in my current scale with the F major. Let's say I go to the G Dorian mode and replace the Gs. Well, clearly I've done some messing around. Obviously I can right click and I can edit the chords if I want, make my own, make further alterations. But the great thing is now I've pulled chords from everywhere, made some edits, and I've got a detect mode right in the chord builder, and I think that's really useful. So if I hit detect, it'll say, "Are you sure you want to replace your current detection?" I'll say yes, and voila, there appears C Mixer Lot-In mode. So Scaler's now detected the chords that I made in the builder, straight from the builder, and come up with a bunch of options of which scales I may be in. Also, we've got a great new way to expand chords. Let's say I'm going to pick a C Dorian mode. Now, if I play through that C Dorian, they're all the diatonic triads, but previously if I wanted to change the style, I'd click in the individual chords, but now I've got a global changer. So I can click once and it just adds sevenths to all those chords. Click again and suddenly I've got 9. You can still do them individually and it'll keep that relative shape. So let's say I add a 7th down to E flat major, and now add an expansion. You can see it's just added a further expansion. What's really cool about this is now I can say, how would that sound in C Phrygian mode? And if I click the C Phrygian mode, Scaler now gives me the option to apply that style to the new scale. So there I am, the style that I've created, back in a Phrygian mode. We've also got lots of new bass tunings in the fretboard to support 4, 5 and 6 string bass guitars, and there's a whole host of bug fixes and performance improvements including better small screen support. We hope you enjoy Scaler 1.7. Please download your copy now at Plugin Boutique.